All right, I appreciate Matt asking me to come down here and do this. I like to talk about hay and barns and something I've been working with for 30, 40 years. When I went to Moore County, didn't know what a round baler was, and how do I click?
Okay. I just use your arrow right there.
Yeah, it ain't working.
That's right.
There we go. But anyhow, Moore County is a picturesque county. I'm proud to live there. I've been there. They haven't run me off in the last 44 years. So I've just enjoyed it. You know, we're a small town. 361 people live in town, and about 6,000 live in the whole county. We're famous for Jack Daniel Distillery. Folks, every day they make it to make it the best we can, and we as forage people ought to be doing the same thing. They use the best ingredients to make it, and they keep it in the dry. You know, that's one of the things I found when we started getting a round baler. I called it that mysterious hay that grew in the hay ring. It just kept getting taller and taller and taller, you know. And first thing you know, you had to move your hay ring because it's full of old rotten hay. And Professor Joe Burns told us that y'all need to do some tests how much hay you're wasting. And that's when I got to work with it. Anyhow, we feed a lot of slop in Moore County, which is spent silage, comes from the distillery. It's a cheap feed for us as long as you're close, but it's pretty good stuff. Old cows kind of like it. We developed a lot of Holstein heifers. One of the things I like to talk to farmers about is don't waste horsepower. If your little tractor will pull it, well, that's all you need. If you got them big boys, then load them. Get the job done in a hurry. We just had a nice talk on feeding hay and the quality and all that stuff. And Katie did an excellent job, and I'm not going to spend time on that. But if you don't test your hay, you don't know what you've got. And I'm not saying test every cutting. I mean every bale, but at least test your different cuttings of hay, because most grasses go down in quality as you go through the year. The biggest thing I want to talk about tonight is losses in hay. Everything we do in harvesting hay, we're losing hay every time. They say anywhere from 1 to 6% loss in cutting, conditioning another 1 to 4%, raking.
Keep going.
Okay, raking hay we lose 5 to 15%. Baling 1 to 15%. Storage 5 to 35%. That's where our big loss comes in. Now, a couple of years ago, I had a farmer call me, said, Moorehead, I'm baling hay for this lady, and she wants me to square bale hers. I need to know how many square bales are in a round bale. Will you come help me unroll one and weigh it? And I said, no, I won't do that. Well, anyhow, he got sort of ill at me, and I said, well, I'll do it if you let me weigh the bale, and then we will unroll 2 rolls. So what we done, he agreed if I'd come help him. So anyhow, we unrolled 2 bales of hay. One of them we raked and tethered. We had a 7% loss after we had raked and tethered it. The bale we just raked, we had a 3.7% loss. I thought that was good data to find out just how much we lost by everything we do. Keeping your equipment in good working order can make a big difference. Storage is where we lose the most hay. This guy right here ought to put his hay in the house. Outside uncovered, folks, you're going to lose over 30%. My first test went from June till January. We lost 35%. Where did we lose it from? We lost it from the top and also from the bottom. Get it up off the ground is very important. The loss from bottom and top is about the same if you just set it down on the ground. Okay, stacked and on tarps, we lost 14%. You can beat that if you get a good gravel pad under your stack and then get the tarp on where it'll take care of it. Now, I'm not a big fan of tarps. I'd rather build a barn because over the long haul, barn will pay for themselves. Tarps will too, but you don't save hardly as much hay and a lot more trouble. Pallets or tires to stack it on is good, but it's also labor intense. I'd rather have rock under it. I know crushed stone is expensive. We're getting at home a 25-ton load is $500 now. But if you've got a river or creek where you can get creek gravel and use, that'll do the same thing. Okay, 5% loss, that's 50 pounds out of a bale of hay in a barn. Why does it lose weight in the barn? Folks, we put most of our hay up at 17, 18% moisture. It's going to dry down to about 12. So you're going to get some shrinkage just the moisture you lose in it. I don't like to see real big barns. This barn's 100 feet long. It's one of my neighbors. What I don't like about it, all his hay is in one place. He's got a 400-acre farm, but that's the only place he had to build another barn. He's built 2 since then, and neither one of them is attached to that. But you know, we need to spread these barns out. Put them in different places where you're going to feed, and don't build them so big. We've burnt several barns in my county just because we put up hay that's not ready to go in the barn. Price of barns. What does it cost to build a barn? We got anywhere from $5.50 a square foot. Had a fella had well, Summertown Metals down at Etheridge, built him a barn 40 by 100. It cost him $5.50 a square feet and had 2 sides enclosed. That's still a pretty good price at $5.50 a square feet. Now, I like the side loading barns, and we're going to talk about that, and I'll show you some pictures here in a minute. They cost a little more because you got to use bar joists and stuff to do away with posts. But what Katie was talking about a while ago, if you put all your hay in some big long barn, you're going to feed it just like you put it in there. If we've got a side loading barn, then we can select what we feed at the right time of the year. Okay, what's it cost to build a barn? At $5.50 a square feet, a 36 by 60 will cost about $11,000. 3 sides enclosed, you're looking at $16,000. My 3 sides, a 36 by 40 side loaded barn, it's going to cost $18,000. I just put the pencil to it. That first barn with just a roof will pay for itself in 4 years, 4.7 years. Now, if you get an economist to hold this, he's going to tell you it takes longer, but I don't, surely that barn is going to last 5 years and I don't have to do any work on it unless you do like my brother did. And the first time we built a hay barn, he ran the tractor through the end of the barn, but stuff like that happens. The second stage barn will take 6.4 years. My side loading barn will take 7.28 years. You know, I tell my farmers, that's one thing I'll go to the bank with and help borrow money to build a barn. I don't know of anything else we can do on the farm to save enough money that will save as much money as having your hay inside a barn. This is a barn stacked 3 high. We put 2 on the end and 1 on top. That way you get 3 bales straight up. Works real well. This is a shed on the side of the barn. You can use it for different things. Just remember, unless you get awful tall, you're not going to be able to meet TAP requirements at 14 foot to stack hay in the shed. But you can always stack it too high. Here's another one with a shed. You can see you got 3 bales in one side of the shed and only 2 in the others. Pallets work. I like to show this picture. I had a farmer that had a trench silo. He decided that he wanted to build a roof over it. The only problem was, folks, he couldn't keep the water out of it. And putting pallets under hay, my wife don't like moving them for me when I'm feeding hay, and I'm sure yours won't either. They will work to get off the ground, but they don't work good. While you're building the barn, make sure you build it right. This barn, if you look how the truss was built, it's not really a truss. This guy saved a couple of 12-foot 2x4s and 1 2x6 or 2x8 for the bottom strand of that truss. What happened with it? The barn started coming down in the center. He had to go in and put a row of posts in to hold the barn up because it was pulling apart. You can see he put steel cables up there to pull the post back together. Go to your extension office, get a plan to build a truss, and build a good truss before you build your barn, so it'll last. You can build pretty barns, whatever you want to do. Sheds, again, they're going to be lower. You can't put as much hay in those, but still, it's some pretty cheap material. You ain't got to buy posts for that shed. Prefab wood trusses are used a lot. You can build your own truss. Any extension office can get you a plan to build your own truss. You can really cut costs there. Here's a barn built, this holds too high in the center. Again, if he'd went a little taller, he could have put 3 bales high and added how much hay he got. Also, he's got 3 sides enclosed on that barn. One other thing I'd like to mention here, folks, always face your barn to the east. Never, if you got 3 sides enclosed, never face it to the west. Here in Middle Tennessee, now I don't know how some of you guys from other states are, but I had a guy build a barn 2 years ago, face it to the west. The builder called me and said, hey, go down there and talk to him. I did. Couldn't talk him out because he wanted to sit at his coffee table and look at the barn from the house and see his hay. Folks, he never put a bale of hay in it. 30 days later, a windstorm came through, laid the barn down. This barn is ready for gravel, and then the hay can come later. Side loading barns is something that UT has pushed since they started storing round bales. This is one Mr. Bill Henshaw built in Moore County back in the 80s. And the beauty of that is he can separate his different cuttings of hay. The bad part of this barn is it's built in 12-foot sections, and it's kind of hard to stack the hay in, but we didn't know any better back then. Now we're building trusses, making them much wider and all. But what's good about those, you know, you can just feed the hay. Different cuttings can be placed in different spots. You can feed it when you need it. You can store anything, keep it in the dry need barns. This is an old barn. It was built in Moore County. It was there when I went there. It was torn down last year. The reason it tore it down, put in a water line, they blasted, busted the tin up on top, and they didn't get it fixed before it rotted, and he replaced it with this barn right here. 2 on the end, 1 on top. I mentioned that a while ago. This is 3-sided enclosed barn. Guy built in 2000, cost $1.60 a square foot. Now that was just materials. He did all the labor. You can convert tool sheds, will work fine. Another thing you can do, you can build beams to go across, space your post out, give you more driving room stacking hay. That works real good. There's a barn that's 15 years old, still been working well. Matter of fact, it's older than that now. This is a barn I built for myself. I put the post on 6 foot, went to the woods, cut cedar post. I put the post on 6 foot because my family labor wasn't too good at driving nails on a purlin standing up on edge, so we turned them down flat. We saw the lumber off the farm. All I bought was nails and metal. When we got through, we had $1 a square foot in it. And that's with a 18-foot shed on it, 36 foot in the middle, 18-foot shed on each side. You can do whatever you want to. I like to see barns wider than this one, but when we first started TAP, this was one of the first barns that was put up. And this farmer worked, matter of fact, he's retired from Jack Daniel now. He put an old number 7 sign on it. That's what it looked like on the inside. You notice the gravel we put in. I'm a firm believer in gravel. One thing I want to tell you too, not only put in gravel, when we first started the TAP program, they would pay on geotextile and gravel in the barn. Why do we need geotextile inside a barn? I hope you build a barn that won't leak. Folks, the geotextile needs to go outside and put plastic under the inside of that barn under your gravel. The reason I like to put plastic under it, it's like building a garage. If you don't put plastic on the concrete, it's going to sweat. One of the things we started several years ago before TAP would pay on it, we'd put a shed on the side of the barn. Makes a great place for working facilities. This is my one side open barn, side loading barn. This is 36 foot by 60, 1 post in the middle. They've got a bar joist across the top there between the posts, and they use 8-inch post on that to hold up that weight. But again, you can go through there and separate your cuttings of hay. These was built by some Mennonites there at home. They do an excellent job of bracing it. He's got a 2x4T, I call it, every 2 foot up to 12 foot. And I thought he was overbuilding the barn, mentioned it to him. He said, no, sir, when I build a barn, I want it so that any bale of hay, whatever, regardless of what size round bale it's got, is going to touch one of my T's between those posts. That way he's not going to knock the end out of the barn. There's inside the looks of it. You can see the braces on the end post, the braces on the corner. Done an excellent job. This Mennonite will build with pressure treated post, or he'll build with cedar post. I like the cedar. They're good to last a long time. Sheds can add space, very cheap, because you don't have to put in a row of post. Again, TAP won't cost share on that shed unless it's 14 foot in the clear. Another barn, these are different kinds. A lot of people will put up one with a roof. That's fine. You'll get some blowing water in it, but not too awfully bad. And then they put gates up to keep the cows out. 3-sided box here. Again, that was faced to the east. This is 24 by 60. Another group of Mennonites build. The reason they build them 24 by 60 is they don't build trusses. All they'll use is timber, and they can get timber 24 foot long to make the barn that work out that way. Nice barn, open it to the east. Again, 3 sides enclosed. The posts are closer together. You got to be more careful stacking hay in the barn. This is one of my farmers. He just started round baling this year. He called me one day and told me how many square bales he put up. He wanted me to design a barn that would hold his number of square bales, 600. So I did it, and he built it. Now he's went to a round baler, so we're going to have to change barns. He can fill that up, but it won't hold as many as he'd like to, I'm sure. The other thing I'd like to mention, folks, when you start a barn, don't start with a problem. Start out building a pad and make it work. How are you going to ever keep water out of this barn? It's just about impossible. But here's one, actually, boy started it, didn't get all of it covered, and the trusses actually failed on the barn. He had to put up new trusses. When you start, get the job done, get it over with. All right. Pretty tough, isn't it? This is what I like to see. Go out there and build you a pad. Pay a little dozer work. It'll pay you off in the long run. And while he's there, make sure he ditches around all sides so that the water don't get in the barn. Again, there's my plastic under the gravel. Out in front of the barn, he'll use geotextile. Cutting a ditch so it'll drain. We shot that out. Dozer guy come in, did a great job with it. He's got a barn that'll stay with him now. That's another picture of it after he got it completed. And again, look at the braces in that barn. Folks, we have wind in Tennessee too. And if you don't brace one right, they'll go down on you. In braces, there, that 2x8 post there holding that bar joist up. There's a Mennonite in Grundy County that builds those bar joists. If you want to build a barn yourself, he also builds metal trusses there in his shop. Another thing we waste hay at is with different hay feeders. These are some figures that came from Noble Foundation out in Oklahoma. We're looking at 17 to 30% loss in a feeder that don't have skirts on it. Waste on the Beckert feeder by Noble's recommendation, or by their test, was 6 to 13%, and the waste on the cone feeder was 3 to 5%. Back several years ago now, before the co-op started selling those things, I was called, told me that I was a hay specialist in Tennessee, when they come look at their hay feeder. Well, I said, well, what kind of hay feeders you building? They said, we're building a cone hay feeder. Well, I wasn't going to tell them that I didn't know what a cone hay feeder was, but I looked it up on the internet when I got off the phone. Folks, I liked what I saw. They'd been used up north for a long time. I went and looked at their feeder, and it made me think of Daddy's old mule barn. You know, he had a trough to feed his grain in under the hay rack. And if the old mules dropped some hay in the trough, they'd still eat it. Same thing with a cone feeder. Noble Foundation, if you'll copy down this address, has a hay ring waste calculator. it will impress you to see how much hay we waste and what it costs you each year. But if you got that wrote down, I'm going to ease on. But that's something that's very important. Look at how much hay you're wasting when you feed it. $45 for a 1,200 pound bale, 15 bales per month for 3 months. Figures from the Noble Foundation Hay Ring Waste Calculator. Now, I've got a neighbor, got a nice John Deere tractor with a cab on it, and he bought him a hay unroller, and he got excited about unrolling hay. Folks, if you'll look, I took that picture in June. Reckon he was wasting any hay? I kept telling him it was. If you're going to feed hay, unroll it that way. Keep your cows just a little bit hungry. Make sure they clean it up every day. I got some boys unroll hay and do a great job with it. They can also move it around and spread the manure out all over the field. Will help with fertility for the next crop. I don't know how many of you ever seen one of these. That's the first hay feeder that co-op ever built. Why was it built that way? Back when we first started getting round balers, how many people had a front end loader? So we had to put it in with a 3-point hitch deal. I took this picture of this old farmer, he's dead and gone now, but he figured out something. If he made those cows eat hay from the end of the bale, he saved a lot more hay than if they ate from the side. And if you look at that picture on the sides, he welded some stockade panels to it. So they had to eat from the end. And folks, that saves a lot of hay. They don't fluff off as much, they fall out on the ground. Okay, that shows you what a ring can do without any skirts on it and not a cone hay feeder. A skirt is very important. We got this cone feeder brought to Moore County after 10 rolls of hay was fed in it. I took this picture. I was impressed, very impressed. What we done, he took a load of gravel, got it off the river bar, gravel bar there in the river, and dumped it, spread it out a little bit, and set the feeder right on top of it. You know, he's got a hay manger there is what he's got. These things are 5 feet and 6 inches tall. We had some come in from Nebraska about the same time, and we had a problem with those. This old cow, once you put your head in there, it's hard for the boss cows to push her out, and they work real well. Again, look the waste on the ground. This is where I tested one ring against the other one. We fed 2 bales of hay in the cone feeder while they was eating 1 bale out of the regular ring. What waste I had in the cone feeder is there in that toe sack. The other is what I got from the regular feeder, only 1 bale. 0.2% ring loss and over 8% on the regular ring. That's quite a savings. One thing I would like to say about that too is we visited with a farmer today. Well, he don't like them. And he don't like them because sometimes he's got Johnson grass over his head when he cuts it. Do they eat that? Nope. And if they don't, where's it going to be? It's going to be in that cone, and they're hard to dump out. The rings that came from Nebraska, I kept hearing complaints on them, and I finally went out in West Tennessee and saw some of those. This was a ring, it was 9 foot in diameter, it set down on your 8-foot ring. The only thing there was, the difference in them was they didn't have the height to keep a cow from eating over the side. Now the one that co-op builds is 6.5 feet high, and that prevents most cows from eating over the top. They don't need to eat over the top, but they still drag it off. But you can see the problem there. You can see hay where those cows drug that hay off. This was in August in 2006. It was very dry, and I wished I'd have done some weighing then, but I didn't have time. I just took some pictures of this guy. He had 2 rings out. There's a difference in the 2. Compare them. I think you'll see it's impressive how much hay they save. We went through about 4 different feeders in the county trying to see, co-op was trying to come up with a way to make them so you could bolt them together. The way that's the first one we used, folks, you could get 5 of them on a 40-foot trailer. They were trying to come up with some way. We tried one with chains. I thought that was a good idea. I didn't think it'd work on a hillside, but we found out it would work on a hillside. The only problem we had, the farmer that put this out for me called me one day and said, Moorehead, come down here and get this hay ring. After the cows ate all the hay, a calf got in there and it took him 2 hours to get the calf out of those chains. But anyhow, it did work, but they come up with a different plan. That's what they wound up selling. Make sure you get those things that bolt together. Make sure the top bolts onto the bottom, because what's going to rust out first? The bottom part of that feeder is what's going to rust out first. Okay? Now, I had some farmers in my county that decided they'd like to build some of their own, and they did. He took 2 hay rings put together to make this, and he could buy 3 rings and make 2 cone feeders. Worked except for one thing. We found out real quick you got to have the skirts on the bottom and the top. So he went back. He even tried the chains. They worked well for him, but we needed the skirts on the bottom and top. This one is one my neighbor built. I call it the super cone. That's built out of 4-inch pipe, and he set it down on top of his hay ring. Worked like a charm. Matter of fact, that hay feeder is still working. It's over 10 years old. He got scraps out of a loafing barn and used it to build cone feeders, and it worked fine. He was going to cut them up and do like co-op said, and I said, hey, why don't you just put them in there and weld them together like this? Folks, it worked. There's a lot of farmers out there that's got a lot of ingenuity about them, can come up with it, but it takes time and money to build these things. Here's where we put the skirts on those local farms. Again, it worked, but he had a lot of labor involved. Sometimes it's better off just go buy something ready-made. Here's one that's built kind of square, but he still got the cone in there and worked good. You can see that. Here's a barn built on 5 foot. One of the things about the closer post is you got something bump against stacking your hay. That's helpful, but it makes a higher price barn. Keep that in mind. This is a 90 by 36 side loading barn. Again, I like the side loading barn so you can separate your hay. Put different things in it. The overhang out front can be as much as 6 foot. Well, depends on how they design it. It can be further. But the side loading barns just got a lot of potential, I think. Sheds that add space. By the way, I would like to mention too that this barn right here burned in the middle of the winter, and we think it's from a leak in the barn and got hay wet and spontaneous combustion got it. There was a little cloud that night and it could have been lightning, we're not sure. Okay, this is a cantilever barn. We had some Mennonites built when we first started building hay barns in the county. Those were pretty cost effective back in the day when they built them. We don't have anybody building one like that now, but it works pretty well. This is another 40 by 60 side loading. Again, cedar post in it. Look at the braces, folks. And what I'm talking about there, he's got a 2x6 down flat on top of another one every 2 foot. And he would not, that same Mennonite still working in my county, he will not build a barn any different. This guy put a shed on the back of his, parked tools in, works out great. Again, his posts are 30 foot apart. If you have any questions, well, feel free to put them in the chat box for Matt.